Okay, today we're going to go on to notes number 7, which is the plant classification chart. Let me see if I can get this lamp over here so we can see maybe a little bit better. Maybe? I don't know, maybe not. All right, but we're going to go on to notes number 7. I told you guys if you were able to print out the notes, that would be a good idea. If not, I'm going to show you real quick how you can set it up anyways. So at the top, if you're doing the handwritten notes, you're going to want to listen to this part of the video. If not, you can go ahead and fast forward until I show the paper part, which I have underneath here. Okay, so if you're doing the handwritten version, you want to make your own notes, okay? Here's how we're going to do it. You need to have 3 boxes at the top for your domain. You don't have to be perfect. Clearly, mine are not. So we have the domain, then we're gonna have the kingdoms, okay? You're gonna have 4 kingdoms coming off of this one. Then we'll have 1 kingdom here, a little bit longer of a box, it has a longer name, and then 1 kingdom out here. Okay, so then we're going to draw 2 more boxes coming off of the last kingdom from the first domain. So these are going to be the phylum, domain, kingdom, phylum. We're going to have 2 different phylums. Okay, then for a second, we're going to forget this side and only work on this side for a minute. So there's 2 groups here. Got a bigger box and then a smaller box. Okay, and then this smaller box is divided into 2 again. And then this smaller box is divided into 2 as well. Okay, now coming back over to this phylum, we have this guy here. He only has 1 subgroup underneath him, and then 1 more subgroup underneath that. Okay, so that's how you want to set it up if you're going to do the handwritten version. If you need to go back and rewind or pause to get caught up, that's totally fine. But once you have this paper set up like this, then you're basically on par with those who have the printed notes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go on to the answers for these. If you printed the notes, make sure you have your name and a notes number 7 at the top. So we're going to start by filling in the 3 different domains. The domain section and the kingdom section should hopefully be a review for you from the classification unit back in October. We also briefly mentioned it back on the slides a couple days ago, but there are 3 domains. I went ahead and gave you Archaea, okay, which the kingdom coming off of Archaea is Archaea bacteria. Okay, the last domain here is bacteria. And the kingdom for that one is Eubacteria. Okay, whoops. And then that leaves us with our very last domain, which is going to be eukaryote. Or eukarya, if you're doing the Latin version, okay? So I like to put little hints next to these domains so it helps me kind of remember how they're separated. Let's go ahead and do the kingdoms for eukaryote. But real quick, just as a reminder, these are all of the organisms that have cells with a nucleus, while these 2 do not have a nucleus. They're prokaryotic. Okay, so these are less advanced, while all of the more advanced organisms fall into the eukaryote category. So there are 4 kingdoms for domain eukaryote, okay? And then we're gonna go ahead and put plantae in this box because here's where we're gonna further divide into the smaller groups. So for eukaryote, we have kingdom plantae. We also have kingdom protista. We also have kingdom fungi and kingdom animalia. Okay, so from here, this is where we're going to split into the two sections for plantae. I mentioned this quite a few times yesterday, but in case you didn't get it, today we're going to hopefully make a lot more sense. So for kingdom plantae, there are two separate phylum, all based on whether or not they have that V word that I was talking about, based on whether or not they have veins. So if they do not have veins, we call those non-vascular. Okay, and then if they do have veins, they're called vascular. Okay. One of the other main differences is if the plant is non-vascular, that means it does not have the tubes to transport water from the ground up or food from the top down. So that means that the plant will usually end up being much, much smaller. So to help me remember that, at the bottom down here, where I'm going to list the examples of non-vascular plants, I like to draw a small, short little moss down here at the bottom. Okay, and then for the vascular plants, to remind me that these are the plants that can grow tall, I like to draw a big tree with some roots coming down off of it. So vascular and non-vascular. Because non-vascular is so much shorter, let's go ahead and fill that out. The only subgroup for non-vascular plants are the bryophytes. That's just the scientific name for non-vascular plants. And then there were three examples that we talked about: mosses, liverworts, and hornworts. Okay, and that's really all there is to non-vascular. They're short. They don't have a whole lot of complex structures like the vascular plants do, but the biggest thing is they don't have those veins that the vascular plants do. We also know that this section, the vascular plants, is like over 94% of all plants fall into the vascular category. So this is the much bigger grouping. It gets much more complex from here. So we'll look at a few of those together. Among all of the plants that have veins, we divide them into two groups: those that reproduce by seeds and those that are seedless. Okay, that's the main difference between those two. And I don't have a list of examples necessarily. Like normally this would kind of, like we have here, we have the name for bryophytes and then it goes down into the examples for the non-vascular. Technically I should have another box down here for the seedless groupings, but we'll just put them in here as examples. So for example, that's what IE stands for. We have whisk ferns, true ferns, horsetails, and club mosses. Okay, so all of these are vascular plants, they just do not reproduce by seeds. Among those that do reproduce by seeds, there's two different ways to harvest those seeds or to grow those seeds. Those that reproduce them inside of a flower, okay, and those that reproduce their seeds inside of either a hard cone or a berry. Okay, so if you remember from yesterday, those two names were angiosperms, or the flower kind, and gymnosperms. Sperms. Okay, so the examples here would be something like conifer. Over here we would have, oak tree, rose, sunflower, those kinds of things. And then the last thing we mentioned yesterday was the angiosperms can be further split up into two groups: the monocots and the dicots. monocots and dicots. And then we said the difference between those two. If you were able to watch the video yesterday, talking about a couple of the differences between monocots and dicots, the only one that we mentioned in the notes was that a monocot is a seed that when it sprouts it only produces one cotyledon or seed leaf, and a dicot is a plant that when it sprouts two leaves at a time. Okay, so this is just kind of a more visual way to see the separation. Again, for the plant unit, we're only looking at this here, but because we already know it and it's good for us to review, we went ahead and filled it out from the domain top down. If you can still go back and fill in the chart for Animalia, I would be very impressed. But anyway, this is kind of just is a good reminder that there are so many organisms out there that it's really important we keep them organized and located in the same place. So again, this is note number 7. So whether you did the handwritten version or the printed off version, just make sure they get with your notes.